This is Patrick Xavier, and I'm glad to have you with me. Ready for my new voice. One can have very good logical arguments based on solid foundations and still be completely wrong with regards to what works. Case in point. Adam Kokesh, our fearless Marine Corps hero and libertarian talk show host, wants the abolishment of the United States government. So far, 900 gun advocates have RSVP'd the Caucasian Civil Disobedience Rally invitation on Facebook. This gunslinging protest march on Washington is slated for July 4th, an odd timing if one considers that Kokesh wants to ban the U.S. government. No government, no country, one would assume. Oh, what the hell? Anarchy is fun, isn't it? He needs 10,000 rifle-toting freedom fighters if it's going to work, knowing that it's illegal to openly carry loaded guns in Washington, D.C. The Facebook invitation for the event says it'll be non-violent, unless the government chooses to make it violent. Come on, girls. Admit it. Tough talk makes you wet. Quoting Corporal Kokesh here. This is an act of civil disobedience, not a permitted event. We will march with rifles loaded and slung across our backs to put the government on notice that we will not be intimidated and cower in submission to tyranny. We are marching to mark the high watermark of government and to turn back the tide. This will be a non-violent event unless the government chooses to make it violent. Should we meet physical resistance, we will peacefully turn back, having shown that free people are not welcome in Washington, and returning with the resolve that the politicians, bureaucrats, and enforcers of the federal government will not be welcome in the land of the free. There's a remote chance that there will be violence, as there has been from government before, and I think it should be clear that if anyone involved in this event is approached respectfully by agents of the state, they will submit to arrest without resisting. We are truly saying, in the subtlest way possible, that we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees, unquote. This reminds me of the heroic words of our finest generation. The generations of men who won World War II and kept the communists at bay for almost 50 years until the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. It's nice to see that some of the people of recent generations still stand up for the values that make America truly a place for badasses, with sacred rights to live in freedom and enjoy the proportional rewards for their hard work. It may have been Stalin's war, but Europeans might have been speaking Russian right now had there been no American guns, no American blood, no American know-how. Do you think you would have iPads right now if you were speaking Russian? A Russian nuclear umbrella would have been a prison and not a force field of protection for freedom, democracy, and mass consumer culture. America used to be the hub of the world, and now, because we don't value freedom anymore, we're just a stop between the point-to-point relations between uppity developing nation-states that no longer want to accept the preeminence and paramount value of the America-centric Western narrative. I've even heard a celestial in Beijing tell me that we're hypocrites for supporting a medieval monarchy in Saudi Arabia while complaining about their holdings in Somalia. The gall. They want our basketball game, our Disneyland, specially customized versions of our Iron Man, our blue jeans, our high technology, our free-flowing capital. But they won't appreciate where baseball comes from. Ungrateful upstarts. I hope they find Jesus and stay poor, meek, and simple, so we won't have to worry about their using too much of God's given bounty while pissing all over the real American dream. Oh, you clever gun worshippers, you go and put the U.S. government, your government, on notice. I am sure you herding libertarian cats could run the show better with your little bands of brothers and sisters than the U.S. government with its institutions, its fiat currency, its large energy reserves, its liberal universities, and its huge high-tech military ever could. Don't you never mind about the coal-burning power plants, potable water, diminishing freshwater tables, growing nationalism in developing countries, CO2, climate change, education, PCBs, toxic waste, diminishing area for landfills, inequality, the need to feed 8 billion people by 2025, the Great Barrier Reef, single mothers who can't afford preschool and their children, who may become the demand for drugs that require the Sinaloa and Los Zetas to exist. I'm sure y'all have the answers. Your priorities are straight, your marksmanship being so darn good. You just can't trust your federal, state, and local professional law enforcement agencies. And who can blame you? If only you personally had been in charge of crowd control, you could have prevented the Boston bombings. Hell, if those marathon watchers had just been armed, they would have somehow known those 2 Middle Eastern-looking kids were packing pressure cooker IEDs, and you could have gunned them down in the street, just like in the movies. Giddy up and go, you well-armed little militias. I'm sure Washington and all of your state representatives who don't spend much time in Washington, D.C. anymore will cower in fear and ensure that every man and woman of voting age in the United States, despite the fact that a majority of Americans want more strident gun control, will be made to become armed to the teeth, and that alone will solve all of America's and the world's problems. It's wonderful that you gunslingers know what's really important. You have to prepare for disaster because you don't have any way to prevent it. You can't wait for Armageddon and must fulfill the prophecies. You are the true children of the apocalypse. Heaven awaits those with enough ammo. Don't solve problems, cause problems, because that's what he wants. Preparing to invent a better world is called progress, and that's progressive, which we all know is just a hair's breadth away from tyranny, communism, and the gulag. If I may, I might suggest an alternative agenda for your trip to D.C. Convoy to Washington with your improvised armored vehicles, survival skills, and guns, and tell everyone that Texas has to secede. After all, somebody once said that you could fit 8 billion people in Texas. Yeah, maybe that's the answer. Just move to Texas and have fun with your guns, and leave the rest of us the hell alone. And we promise that the rest of the world will leave you alone in Texas. We will even finance and help you build a huge, impenetrable, high-tech wall all the way around the Texas border to keep all of us out so you'll feel safer. You can then have all your own textbooks too. How nice would that be? T-Bone Pickens already bought all the water rights in Texas and figured out how to monetize those rights for when the oil runs out. You're Texas genius. So you'll have something to trade when no one wants your oil anymore. But you may not have anything to drink, but that's okay. I'm sure you'll figure things out. Since you'll be so free and so well armed, and your Texas government won't interfere with anyone in Texas, being safely tucked behind your wall, just like your sister country in North Korea is. And with your God in charge, or no God as the case may be, you'll finally be living in the best of all possible worlds. It's obvious that some good people of more noble concerns don't have much time to reckon the vicissitudes of the rest of the world. Hoorah for that! George W. Bush can be your head of state until he dies, and Jeb can take over. And the new world order will be a state at the center of the true human experience and utterly separated from the corrupt, socialist-leaning world of desacralized and amoral utopian fantasy. Time for some quotes. There are no knowns. These are the things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know. If you try to please everybody, somebody's not going to like it. Donald Rumsfeld. There comes a time when deceit and defiance must be seen for what they are, and at that point, a gathering danger must be directly confronted. At that point, we must show that beyond our resolutions is actual resolve. It's easy to take liberty for granted when you have never had it taken from you. Dick Cheney. Leadership to me means duty, honor, country. It means character, and it means listening from time to time. George W. Bush. I'm sure he listened to Donald Dick from time to time. One more guy. A witty saying proves nothing. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainly is absurd. Sorry, let me say that again. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is absurd. Voltaire. Okay, enough quotes. Back to Texas. I'm pretty sure the rest of the world won't have to send you any aid. Y'all won't need any technology transfer, being as you are all so self-sufficient. Y'all have the skills to survive, so you won't pose a nuclear threat to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world won't bother with the free people of Texas. Y'all can do whatever you like. Be as big as can be, and believe in the one true religion or not. Because nobody tells a Texan what to believe. The rest of us will figure out ways to solve humanity's many pressing problems by other means. We'll struggle across borders, cultures, ideological disagreements, and worldviews to protect our environment, fight poverty, work towards better human rights, women's rights, etc. And continuing to do the heavy lifting as required, using the many institutions, civic organizations, NGOs, tools, methodologies, systems, and resources at our disposal, making the tough and sometimes heartbreaking decisions and compromises while dealing with the anxiety-producing trade-offs, and while plodding on imperfectly into a more ideal future, one where hopefully our children will look back on what we did and be proud. And we'll eventually have this amusement park called Texas, smack dab in the middle of North America to marvel at, with its own DMZ that would make Koreans blush with envy. I can't wait to take the tour. Thank you, gunslingers. Now I have a vision of a truly wonderful world. Good luck in Washington, D.C. Remember, grab your kit, hop on your armored and weaponized vehicles, and ride to the rally in Washington. Show those million-man Afro-Americans and their sympathizers who's in charge. I figure 100 armed freedom fighters are worth at least 10,000 liberals marching to celebrate civil rights and proper recognition. Don't forget the RSVP. We need 10,000 of you.
on behalf
This is
of my family,
Patrick Xavier from Pat RIOTS saying
my wife at
thank
home
you
and
very
my
much
children.
for tuning in, and we hope
We
to
have
talk
been
again
the brunt
real soon.
of a whole lot of attacks. And those of you who know the plight of my father knows that whenever any black man is in trouble, he always come to your aid. Never be ashamed to stand up and say that Farrakhan is a friend of the black man. And I want all, and I challenge all of the leaders, that when you are asked by your enemy and those who oppressed us, my father is not a bigot. He's not a racist. He is not an anti-Semite.